The film begins with an incident in the prison which shows the main character named Advait. He could easily beat up the entire prison to take a bracelet from an inmate that looks battered. In the past, Advait was an adventurous person who just moved to Goa for a fresh start in his life. For Indian, Goa is a beautiful place like heaven. Somewhere else, a woman named Sarah, who also left everything she had, went to Goa to live there. The two of them accidentally met at a party and got acquainted there under the explosion of the beautiful fireworks. Suddenly, police raided the party and made everyone panic. Advait helped Sarah to escape from there and decided to go to another club for another party. For them, life is all about partying that will never end. At the next party, they met a drug addict and a prostitute named Jessie who gave them drugs so they could enjoy the party more. At that time, Advait realized that he had fallen in love with Sarah, and unexpectedly, Sarah also felt the same way, so, after enjoying the party, they went to the beach and made out. When the morning came, Sarah left Advait to test if he could find her again to see if he really loved her. Long story short, Advait managed to find her again, who at that time was climbing a hill. Advait said that he had fallen in love with her so much he was able to find her again. To see Advait's determination, Sarah told him to jump from the cliff with her. Without any hesitation, while holding Sarah's hand, both of them jumped into the ocean. Since that day, they officially became lovers. Many things were done by the two of them as if the world was only their own. They also helped Jessie, who at that time passed out after having seizures, made them both considered her good friends. While lying weakly in the hospital, Jessie told Advait and Sarah that in fact, she herself was aware of how dangerous the world she lived in, but on the other hand, she had accepted the fate if later she might die after choosing that lifestyle. Hearing Jessie's words, Sarah started questioning whether to continue her life in Goa or moved out of the city, because she knew the fun she had with Advait was nothing more than temporary things that might end up being forgotten. After that incident in the hospital, Advait took Sarah somewhere. He surprised her with a little marriage-like event. The two of them were officially married even though they didn't have a wedding ceremony. A few months after getting married, Advait and Sarah decided to live together, but even though they were married, they had not left their long-distance life. One day while clubbing, Sarah told Advait that she was pregnant and made him surprised. While enjoying their time at the party, Sarah saw a young girl named Vani calling her dad on the phone. Suddenly, a police officer named Inspector Anjani Agashe, who turned out to be Vani's father, crashed the party to arrest a drug dealer who apparently was at the same party. A gunfight happened and sadly, Vani was accidentally shot by Agashe. She died in her father's arms. Seeing what happened to Agashe made Sarah's plan to abort the baby immediately disappear. She told Advait that she wanted their baby to live. Advait, who heard that, felt that he was not ready to be a father. He then left Sarah. Advait went out of town to visit his brother who was already married. He told his brother everything that he had gone through with Sarah. Hearing the story, his brother suggested that Advait immediately return to Sarah and take responsibility unless he wanted to feel guilty for the rest of his life. Advait, who at that time still doubted his decision, finally decided to return to Sarah after he saw how happy his brother lived with his wife and child. Somewhere else, a police inspector named Michael was seen exercising while listening to the chatter of his men who told him about Jessie, a prostitute and drug addict, who is also Advait and Sarah's friend. Turned out, due to childhood abuse, Michael was uncomfortable with sex and intimacy and rejected Teresa, his girlfriend, when she touches him before marriage, giving the excuse that he doesn't want such relations before the wedding. However, fearing that his lack of sexual experience will make him less than a man, Michael went to Jessie to lose his virginity. It turned out that at Jessie's house at that time, there was only Sarah. Jessie was away at the market. Unfortunately, Michael mistook Sarah for Jessie and immediately harassed her to satisfy himself. Fortunately, Advait, who had returned to Goa, came on time to help Sarah, who was hurt by Michael. Advait immediately attacked Michael and a fight between them happened. During the fight, Sarah hit Michael's head with a vase and sent him unconscious. After Michael fainted, Sarah decided to call the police so they could handle the case, but unfortunately, the police who came turned out to be Michael's colleagues. Sarah and Advait asked to be evacuated using an ambulance. In the ambulance, Advait told Sarah that he was ready to become a father. Sadly, without them knowing, they were both taken to an old deserted bridge. There, they were tortured until finally, Michael came and injected Sarah with a lethal injection. He also managed to manipulate Sarah's death so that Advait will bore all the accusations. Sarah's body was thrown into the sea so that nobody would ever find her again. A few days later, Michael's life was not affected by the incident. He was finally able to marry his girlfriend, Teresa, while Advait was thrown into prison for a mistake he never made. Since then, Advait decided to train like a madman in order to get revenge on Michael and his men. 5 years later, Agasha had become a brutal police officer that didn't hesitate to smear his hands with the blood of the criminals that he arrested, thanks to the incident with his daughter 5 years ago. That day, after torturing a criminal, Agasha received a call from Advait, saying that a murder was about to happen that night. Unfortunately, Agasha seemed to not care at all and said that the caller had dialed the wrong number. Somewhere else, Michael is now well established and lived happily with Teresa, who is now his wife. Unfortunately, Michael accidentally found evidence that his wife had been cheating with another man, because since they were married, Michael was never able to satisfy her sexually, so she tried to find another man for that problem. Before they could even finish discussing the evidence found by Michael, he received an emergency call for duty because one of his men had been found dead. When Michael arrived at the crime scene, Agasha was already there. He knew that the incident was a premeditated murder because, from the evidence found at the crime scene, it was clear that the murderer had prepared everything. Meanwhile, Michael was still in shock because he found out that the victim of the murder was one of his trusted subordinates. Thanks to Agasha's experience handling many cases, he could tell the details of the incident from all the evidence at the crime scene. At that time, they still didn't know that the person who did it was none other than Advait, who wanted to revenge on Michael. At the police station, they had found a key witness for this incident. He was the person who sold the lethal injection to the murderer. During the interrogation, Agasha and Michael argued because Michael considered Agasha's interrogation to be too brutal for Michael. The witness then informed them that he received an order from a woman named Jessie. Not long after, Agasha suddenly got another call from Advait. After the call ended, the police immediately tracked where the call was made, and shortly after they found the location, Agasha and Michael immediately went there. Meanwhile, Advait went to his next target, another of Michael's subordinates who planned Sarah's murder and framed him 5 years ago. Advait had become a beast and could easily murder his target, and once again the police are too late to prevent the death of one of their comrades. After the 2 murder cases, Agasha had put interest in the murderer's motives for killing his colleagues. The police made the place a crime scene. There, they found a lot of evidence about the serial killer they were looking for, until finally, Agasha and Michael found out that the person's identity was Advait. Since then, Michael also began to show signs that he had a mental problem. Agasha started suspecting Michael's behavior. He then told Michael to go home so he could calm down. Meanwhile, the police who had found out that the serial killer was after Michael's men, immediately went to find the last person. Turned out, he was in a football match and was gambling there. After being called and told that he was being targeted by a serial killer, the man immediately called all his colleagues to protect him, and sure enough, when he was visited by Advait who wanted to kill him, Advait was forced to fight dozens of people, but even with that much effort to stop him, Advait was still too strong. No one could match Advait's sense of revenge. In the end, after a one-sided fight between them, the man fell from the height of the 10th floor straight into one of the police cars below. At the same time, Michael apparently went to Jesse's house. Jesse, who knew that Michael was coming there, immediately burned the evidence which showed Advait's revenge plan before Michael managed to break in. Shockingly, after Advait murdered all of Michael's men, he turned himself into the police. Agasha was shocked. He felt something was off from Advait. Agasha felt he had been tricked. He knew that Advait's plan was not a plan that could be made in just one night, but rather a very complex plan that needed a lot of time to arrange. Michael, who had just arrived at the police station, asked to be given time to interrogate Advait. When interrogating, Michael cut off all audio and security camera footage in the interrogation room. In front of Advait, Michael admitted that he was a person with a mental illness. Since he was a child, his mother often beat him. His mental illness caused a traumatic event that prevented him from doing sexual intercourse. He also revealed that before he came there, he also raped Jessie, who was dying in front of her burning house. Hearing that his friend had been tainted by Michael, Advait became angry and suddenly attacked Michael, making all the police who heard that go inside to calm him down. In the toilet, Michael met Agasha, who was still thinking about the case they were working on. Michael asked him to kill Advait outside of the procedures carried out by the police. Agasha was shocked to hear that came from Michael. He was surprised by the change in Michael's behavior. He also noticed Michael's gaze became the same as Advait's gaze, which was driven by a sense of revenge. When Michael arrived home, he was greeted by his wife, who wanted to divorce him. He realized that he was divorced because his wife preferred to live with the man she had an affair with that can satisfy her sex drive. He was engulfed in anger and decided to kill her. After a series of attempts that Teresa did to save herself, Michael managed to corner her and pointed his gun at her, but at the very last moment, Michael decided to kill her by strangling her to death. But just before Teresa lost her consciousness, someone from behind injected Michael's neck with a syringe. The person was none other than Sarah, the woman he thought he had killed 5 years ago after throwing her into the ocean. Turned out, Sarah, who was injected and thrown off the bridge, is actually still alive and in good health after being helped by Jesse. It is revealed that Advait did not act alone to commit the serial killings of Michael's men. While Advait was training himself in prison, Sarah, who was waiting for Advait to finish his sentence in prison, made the perfect plan to kill Michael's subordinates. After Advait showed up, he took Michael somewhere to be executed, but before he was shot, Advait told him that the reason for all his actions was Michael. Then he told everything that he had experienced to Agache. Agache, who realized that his suspicion of Michael was right, decided to come to the crime scene to finish things off with his own hand. When the morning came, Michael's house has become a crime scene. Teresa and Agache confirmed to the police that it was purely an accidental incident. Agache closed the case of Michael's death. Later, Advait turned out to be still alive. After the incident, he was not shot by Agache but instead was freed by Agache to enjoy his beautiful time with Sarah while watching the sunrise.